Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tutorials of Tone. My name is Alex. Thank you so much for watching this video. Today's topic, as you heard in the intro with Bach, we have classical guitars played through our Fractal Audio Systems device. Today I'm on the FM3 and getting the most out of my Benfield Acoustic Nylon-stringed classical guitar. This has an LR Baggs Anthem nylon in it because, as we all know, the best thing to do when you spend a lot of money on a really finely crafted piece of wood is you take a drill to it and you modify it, of course. So I don't do that. My mentor and dear friend at Willie's American Guitars, Steve Morgan, did this a while ago, adding the LR Baggs Anthem nylon preamp and pickup system to this guitar, making it usable in the professional landscape. So what we're going to talk about today is dialing in a preset that works to get you the most out of your classical playing. When you're on either a traditional gig and you need amplification, perhaps you're on a recording session, or you're on a live date. You have to play a wedding ceremony and then a reception. You don't want to bring another rig. You want to keep everything nice and contained. Well, this is one great way to do that. We're going to go into all the tips and tricks that can go into making this your go-to rig for your classical playing. Let's dive right in. So here we have our layout for our classical guitar preset within the FM3. It's a very simple preset, but sometimes less is more. And when you have a great sounding instrument with a really great preamp and pickup, you don't need to modify it all that much. So we're going to dive into how to get the most out of this with the few components we have in the chain. Up first, we have our input block. Everything here is at stock settings except the output level. In order to bring this to unity gain, to keep everything here in the preamp section where I can control the volume at its nominal level, I decided to boost the output here instead of on the guitar, so I had room to grow or decrease with the volume slider. But everything else is stock. Next up in our chain, we have the Studio FF compressor. These are the stock settings that I use for Blue, my Music Man Steve Morse guitar. But this is a great starting place for any classical endeavor, having a compressor to keep things nice, uniform, and consistent out front. If you're playing a solo classical gig, Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis, for example, you're not going to be plugged in to begin with. The guitar will speak for itself, quite literally. But in every other instance, say you're playing with a string quartet, or you're playing with a rhythm trio for a wedding ceremony, you need to be amplified, and you need to stay in the mix at a consistent level, so the sound man's not turning you up and down, because the safest bet is always down, and you won't be heard. Having a nice compressor at the front end will keep everything nice and homogeneous. People will thank you. So here we have no auto makeup gain. The release time is down to 63.25 milliseconds. Our mix is at 90%, so a little bit of that unprocessed signal coming through, but mostly the compressed sound, the very light ratio of 2:1 compression. And our level to make up for the compressed signal is up to 6.5 dB. Up next, we have the Tube Pre amp model. This is just a basic tube preamp, and it works wonders for all acoustic instruments. It's where I go to. As a matter of fact, I'm using something from my blocks library, Acoustic Pre. These are the settings that I always start with at default, and then I'll go in, adjust certain parameters, whether here, the input EQ or output EQ, to really help sculpt the tone and get the most out of the instrument's natural sound, which we will dive to in a moment. So here we have the bass down to 3, the mids up a tad, a little bit of depth to bring back some low end, the master volume up to 7, and our level is up at 0 dB. This defaults to -12, so this is another great way to gain stage, to get that level up to unity and keep everybody happy. But another way that I like to keep things nice and tight live, low cut and high cut. These are indispensable tools in the input EQ And for this particular guitar, there's a bountiful amount of low end. I like having 70 hertz on the low cut, and I don't really need a lot of brilliance and shimmer, so 8500 hertz for high cut. Now this is where things get interesting. The output EQ section of the amp model. This is the only acoustic preset that I have where I use this in the output EQ section instead of a graphic EQ block later in the chain. I wanted to test it out. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it so much that I attached a control switch to bring this in and out at my leisure. So we're going to hear what that sounds like when you bring this in and out. So as you could hear, that makes a massive difference on the perception of our sound as we're playing. So this is a great thing to have, whether you're playing your classical stuff, where I like having this scoop, or if you're playing more traditional parts, maybe you need a mid bump for a solo break or an exposed line. It's really great to turn this off and have those mids speak for you and jump out front. Normally, I would attach the exact same control switch modifier, control switch 2, to the level function. And in doing so, I would set things to unity gain, whether it was in or out, and setting the min and max accordingly. This is a great way to keep everything exactly where it needs to be in terms of perceived volume, but just shape the tone. This is a great tactic, and you can learn more about control switches at the video above. And now for my favorite part of every acoustic preset, the cab block, and specifically the free Acoustic IRs that I use. My friend Wesley hipped me to these years ago, and I have been hooked ever since. Lately, I've been playing more nylon string things through the Fractal, and we have options for that we will dive into momentarily. But check out the website, the massive database, and the quality, all of the extensive research that's gone into it. It's just incredible. All free to use and try. I highly recommend doing that if you have any acoustic instrument, whether it's a guitar, nylon or steel, maybe it's a 12 string, maybe you play mandolin or banjo. They've got it all there. And different pickup systems, a plethora of guitars. It's crazy. There's a donate button on the page. If you do partake, I suggest leaving a donation, and anyone who purchases the acoustic pack from my Gumroad store, know that the proceeds from that will in part go to this site to keep it going. This is an indispensable tool and of course a cornerstone of all of my professional work on acoustic instruments. But enough gabbing and enough gushing. Let's dive in to what I'm using here. So what we've been hearing so far is not a nylon string IR. It's actually my favorite Martin IR for a steel string acoustic. This has a very different pronunciation for our tone. And I do have a nylon IR set pulled up, the Graciliano Perez, and it's wonderful as well. On the foot switch of this preset, I can change between these depending on what I need, and this will make a great difference in the tone. So let's hear what that sounds like. So as you could hear, these IRs make all the difference, and I have attenuated the levels accordingly over here to give us more, and again bring us closer to unity gain. Traditionally, I will stick with channel B, the nylon set of IRs, but as we heard in the intro and throughout the previous examples, there's something to it to have a little bit more mids, a little bit more high clarity coming from a nylon, and there's no rules here. You can do whatever works for your given application, and if it sounds good, it is good. That's what's most important. For the nylon set of IRs, I have a 60 Hz low cut with a very aggressive slope of 24 dB and a 10K high cut. I have adopted the exact same low cut and high cut for this preset in the K&K for the Martin steel string IRs, just to give it a nice even comparison, and when jumping back and forth, you're not getting slammed with low end or getting the whole floor cut out from under you. And for comparison's sake, and as a third option, you can always have the final IR that is in the factory presets. This is Factory 2, number 1024. This is totally flat. Know that you have to compensate for the level in order to bring things to unity. This is a really great way to just have no coloration on your IR. And there you have it. You can use the IRs, you cannot use the IRs. They're all valid as long as you like the sound that it produces. But it's always great to have options. And especially when we record with these direct signals, we have the opportunity to reamp things. And that makes all the difference in the world. Always record a DI. Always have the option to reamp, and with the Fractal stuff, the sky is the limit. And now for the fun, the garnishing effects at the end of the chain. First up, we have the enhancer block. This stereoizes your signal, taking a time-based panning algorithm, taking your mono signal and putting it out into the stereo field. Everything we've heard thus far has been utilizing the enhance block, but we can toggle that on and off with a foot switch and get the most out of our unit and our given application. So as you can hear with that example, really widens the stereo field and is a very effective tool, especially in the studio. Just know that if you are running in mono, summing to mono, or running one cable out of your device, you're not going to get that effect with the modern type. But you won't have phase issues like you will with the other two types if you choose to run that way. And finally, at the end of the chain, the magic sweet sauce of any great classical tone, the reverb. This is the music hall reverb, and I absolutely love using this particular reverb, but have lately grown accustomed to and infatuated with the symphony hall reverb. So, built into this preset, we have the music hall reverb at 10%, 15%, so of course more, then the symphony hall and the symphony hall with 15%. A really great thing to have on tap. So we can hear those examples again. You gotta have fun with Steve Howlicks once in a while, right? But these are 4 wonderful options that you have at your disposal with this preset in the reverb camp. I personally love these settings, and I also have saved in a blocks library the exact specifications from Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis. Basically my home turf, and a way that I get to just feel a little bit more at home every time I plug in an acoustic instrument. Or perhaps reamp all of the guitars for my K622 clarinet concerto, played on guitars. Maybe I did that. But I digress. We can now hear everything muted, hear the natural sound of the guitar, and then go back and start enabling things, engaging different components and hearing what the difference sounds like. And you can use any stage in between. It's really quite amazing. So as you could hear, we have a lot of tonal options at our disposal. You can just run the straight DI, get a great level from your input, and call it a day. Maybe just add reverb, or just some compression, in this case, quite a bit, in the mix knob. You could run all of that into the tube pre to sculpt your tone a little bit. We had our graphic EQ of the output EQ engaged, or you could bring in some Cab IRs. You could bring in the Martin as we did here. You could switch over to the other IR set we have on tap and use that. You could even go totally flat and just use this as a level shaping device. And of course, you could use the enhance block to stereo widen. You could use different reverbs to add different spatial effects. And all of these are good. All of them are valid, and whatever suits your musical needs is what you should do with your specific preset for your nylon-stringed classical guitar. Well, that about does it for this video covering classical guitars and nylon-stringed instruments in our favorite Fractal device, whether you're on the Axe FX3, the FM9, or the FM3. Now, if you got a lot out of this video, which I hope you did, I hope you can take these tools into your next musical endeavor and use them to their fullest for what your musical situation requires. Whether you're a true classical aficionado, or maybe you just have to dabble to play the odd wedding reception, or the art museum gallery opening, or perhaps a psychic expo where you're asked to play in the corner for some background stuff for 8 hours. You're going to have a preset and the tools to build a preset to your own design and get you there in the best way possible. If you liked this video, which I hope you did, there are plenty more videos throughout the channel that you can check out at your leisure. Other tutorials of tone, Fractal 101s, gear reviews, playthroughs, lessons, etc. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.